While we were making the games, we had no idea that it was, really kind of reaching past games into pop culture and whatnot. The design inspiration for the cast, as well as just the game in general, was just our influence from watching movies, comic books, TV shows, anything with action in it. So we were certainly the children of the 70s and the 80s growing up. And so a lot of our characters are actually really influenced by those characters. Liu Kang is clearly influenced by Bruce Lee and some of the characters that he's played. Johnny Cage is Jean-Claude Van Damme. Sonya Blade is Sarah Connor. And so it's really just a collection of all the influences that we had put into a group of 4 guys in their 20s, each with a different expertise, all contributing to this one game, and you could just see the influence. Enter the Dragon, Big Trouble in Little China. You could see how Mortal Kombat could be formed. This was our first fighting game that we had done. We had done other games. John Tobias had, like his previous games were, he drew all the graphics, so this was his kind of first digitized game. So there was a lot of work with lighting and whatnot, and trying to get as realistic of a look as possible. And John would always describe it as like a gritty look. He really didn't want it to be pristine graphics. He wanted it to look almost like you could see the errors and bleeding in the characters. It made them look that much more realistic, like a photograph as opposed to sprites or anime or something like that. But there was quite a bit of trial and error. There was a huge amount of winging it, right? Like, the scorpion spear move was literally just an idea that popped up as we were talking. I had asked for like this harpoon thing, and John said, oh, let's make the tail, kind of like a snake. And literally we're just making it up on the spot. And it ended up being, one of the most, if not the most, kind of recognizable move in Mortal Kombat. So we didn't draw that on paper. We didn't give it was just, us standing around while we were filming. And, that idea just kind of popped up. Well, Midway Games had kind of pioneered in the arcade this process that we call digitizing graphics, basically taking real live objects or real live people and turning them into sprites and putting them into the game. So we had a number of games, Narc, Terminator 2 arcade game, a couple of games that I had worked on, and some of them were hand-drawn, Smash TV, but the main technology that Midway was really leaning into was digitized graphics. So that had already been established, and we knew before we had thought of Mortal Kombat that the next game was going to be a digitized graphics. So then the process was really finding a room with a back wall that we could color a certain color, and filming real people doing punches and kicks and flips and things that we certainly couldn't do in costume, and creating these in some ways they're kind of like superheroes, right? They have the costumes, they have abilities that they can do. That was always part of the plan, but we were just kind of utilizing the technology that we had available to us in a category of games that Midway had never made before. We really thought that, fighting games was a great new category to explore. I do think it influenced other game studios. It also influenced us. Midway released a wrestling game that was digitized graphics as well, and they brought in the actual wrestlers and stuff. So they were really leaning into it with recognizable celebrities. The guys that we used weren't celebrities at the time, but the guy who played Doink the Clown, I remember the Undertaker. They were all coming in and doing that. I don't remember a lot of arcade games coming out with that technology, because I guess it was you had to have a studio, you had to have an expertise on it. MK2 came along and everything we learned applied to that, and that looked much better than the first games. We had a sweet spot there where we were kind of the only kids in town with a digitized arcade game. The core elements that need to be in a Mortal Kombat game are probably some amount of the supernatural, some amount of grounded universe as well. Usually the mixture of the two is a big part of the appeal of Mortal Kombat, is putting regular people in a supernatural situation. I think that's a lot of what player's experience too, as well as we want to see our character's experience. As far as gameplay, my feeling is when you're 33 years old, when you're on your 12th or 13th game, there's a certain amount of new features that we need to introduce to keep the game interesting. Oh, what's interesting about this game? Oh, they added this, as opposed to just putting a prettier coat of paint on these characters that you've been seeing for, 30 plus years. Scorpion, Sub-Zero, Liu Kang, Raiden, Katana. There's a number of these kind of staple characters that it's like having a Justice League without Batman in it.
For me, it's obviously the gore and the crazy finishers. Lately, in the last ones we've made, we've always brought something back, be it animalities from the most recent, things like that too, or mercies from back in the day when we brought those back. That can also be the hard part too, because with 30 years, there's so many things we just can't fit into one game, obviously. But definitely like finishers, always huge. And you gotta have Scorpion and Sub-Zero.
You mistake me for Shao Kahn.
The story was really just a couple of paragraphs. There was a bio, and then you would see the character doing like a kata or something. And then there was an ending. What I think a lot of people don't realize is a lot of people filled in the rest of the story with their imagination. We made them a little bit more elaborate in Mortal Kombat 2, but we didn't get into like the, telling a really deep story until, 4 or 5 games down the line, where we had endings that were more animated and whatnot. But there was certainly like a mystery element to the lore, because there was so little information that just caused so much more speculation. We didn't choose to do that. As far as the characters not being in a certain game, for production reasons, we couldn't include all the characters, so we didn't have Sonya and Kano in Mortal Kombat 2. And so, John wrote the story to say, oh, this happened to them and that happened. We tied Sonya up, and the story basically just was like, this is why you're not seeing this character. And everybody was like, okay, that makes a lot of sense. Mortal Kombat vs. DC was the first game where we actually had the cinematic story that would play, and then we were putting fights in between the story. But with Mortal Kombat 9, it was really exciting because, we hired real actors. We see a script and we see them reading the script, and it was very much like making a movie. Mortal Kombat 11 was obviously the 11th kind of installment in terms of like advancing the story. So when we started, it was, Shang Tsung, and then you find out that he has a boss, Shao Kahn, and we kept layering bosses with each game, right? And each game we wanted it to be bigger stakes, a more threatening boss, a bigger boss. And we had done like a time jump forward in Mortal Kombat X. All the characters were 25 years older, they had kids and whatnot. When we reached Chronicon, we had gotten so grand and so big that we were like, we just can't think of yet an even more who was looking down all over all of that, So Liu Kang had won, right? He had become kind of like the new fire god and whatnot. And we thought, let's try to scale down. But at the same time, we also wanted to kind of plant the seed, like we did in MK11, that there are many Mortal Kombats. And some of them Shang Tsung won, and some of them Liu Kang won, and there was a crossing of those two in MK1. So the main kind of reason we reset was because it had gotten so big that we thought, okay, the only direction to go now is to shrink it down again.
The Combat Cast starts now.
All right, and welcome to the latest edition of the Combat Cast. So when it came to coming up with the Combat Cast, we wanted a way to show our fans kind of in real time what was happening, and like show the characters as we were making them and be able to walk through the entire thing. I've had so many amazing fans come up and say, like, every Thursday, that's what we watch. We watch it. I'm ready for it. I watch it with my friends. We love doing it because it's a really good way to get out in front of the fans and show them the things that they want to see. And that's something we'll never stop doing. We love doing the Combat Cast. It's probably my favorite thing I do. And I always look forward to the day that we drop that announcement that the Combat Cast is coming back, because that first one, the chat goes nuts. Like, it is crazy. And that feels good because people do remember what we've done, because we've created this appointment television for them.
Mortal Kombat games, they probably go a little bit further in terms of the outrageous, right? It's not just fighting. We're dropping bombs on the ground. We're making clones of characters that they're freezing and doing, we're doing really wild stuff. It's kind of hard to predict every single combination, every single permutation of circumstances of characters and now cameos and all that. So we don't want to take away from that and, just kind of make it generic and then it's easier to balance. But we're always in this kind of constant debate of let the player do what they want, but on the other side is still make it a game, still make it a competition, still make it some amount of skill that you're playing in the game, as well as make it accessible for other players. So to me, one of the big things that comes out is letting it stay Mortal Kombat with all the craziness, avoid infinites, avoid things that are just not fun to watch or not fun to play against, and maintain the Mortal Kombat while keeping some level of legitimate competition in there. We're asking the question, well, is it still fun? If we remove this part of the move, is it still fun in the game? Or does this move just simply break everything and we have to get rid of it? So it's a constant debate with, QA is involved, design is involved, art is involved, effects are involved. A lot of debates and discussion going on.
The thing about our design team is they are watching everything. You walk into one of their offices, when they're working on the game, one of the screens has 4 different streams on from different people around the world playing our game. So we're always paying attention to what's happening in the meta. We're always watching every tournament. We have meetings where we talk about all the things like, is this character too strong? What can we do to make this character stronger? Our design team is really locked in on where the game is sitting at any given time. And they're always formulating ideas of how to make things better, bring some characters up, take some characters a little bit down, just to try to really get that balance line. It feels really awesome, I think, for the entire team to be involved in something that has their hand in so many different things, like you said, movies, music, all of this sort of things. We have to take care of it. And I think that's the thing that we really learn, is we have to be really careful with what we do with Mortal Kombat because it affects so many people and so many different types of pop culture. It makes it important to us. I always explain to people whenever I tell someone where I work, I'm like, I work in video games. And they're like, what game? And I was like, Mortal Kombat. And you can tell that to pretty much anyone who asks that question, they'll know what you're talking about. Like when I got the job, my mom knew what Mortal Kombat was. So it's just it's just been in the zeitgeist and in the world for so many years. It's one of the biggest games of all time.
I don't know of many fighting games or video games in general that a series has sold 100 million units, or the last several games were the highest selling. Usually a game comes out, it's biggest on the first or second one, and then there's a tails off. We've gone through so many different generations of gaming. Arcade games, multiple console games from Sega Genesis and Nintendo to N64 and PlayStation, and then all the following PlayStations and Xbox. We've been around and we've had major entries to all of those gaming kind of generations. So the legacy of Mortal Kombat was a game that started with very humble beginnings, very limited expectation because of the situation, that exploded beyond any of our wildest dreams. We never would have thought in 30-something years we would still be doing Mortal Kombat games. It would have expanded into animated shows, comics, movies, lunchboxes. And I believe that it is approaching one of these things that we call a forever franchise. I believe that it's approaching something that's going to be lasting far longer than its original creators did. I think that that's kind of its legacy, its history, as I would describe it from beginning to end. It's amazing how many people have a story that they could tell me, like, it was at a Pizza Hut on this street and that I was 11, my dad gave me 6 quarters, very specific stories about when they first saw MK1 or MK2. Till the day you die, you will remember the first time you saw Mortal Kombat.
Welcome back, everybody, to Las Vegas, Nevada, here for Evo.
As a person who works for NetherRealm, when it comes to who do I want to see do well at Evo, I don't want to be biased, but I really like the characters they play. Rewind, I love his Reiko, and just as a human, I've always been very close with Gore, and I love his Garrus play, and I mean, everybody loves watching Gore, so seeing those two do well would be awesome to me. And we are seeing more of the young kids who are playing coming up. I don't know what's gonna happen in Evo, but there are so many players that if you told me they won, I wouldn't be surprised. And I'm also very excited to say we've been seeing a lot of different character variations. We've seen a lot of different cameos. Like, we're starting to see so many other characters used in the game, and that's really exciting to us too. You could have not had any points right now, and if you win Evo, you're going to the finals. And I think that's exciting for fans to see. We deeply love what we do. We love Mortal Kombat, and especially the fans. Like, we wouldn't have been in people's minds for this long if it wasn't for the fans who keep following us and playing the games. And that's the most important thing. They're playing the games, and we love that, and we thank every one of them. It's awesome.
The obvious thing we would want to say to our fans is thanks for continuing on this ride with us. It's been such a long journey, and we continue to be inspired by, you know, all the players who get so good at the game. The cosplay is just amazing. And just seeing that next generation of player come in, hopefully we'll be around to continue making games and letting them enjoy it.